He bought a Chinese girl at an auction for $3 and gave her his ranch. The sun was just beginning to rise over the dusty hills that surrounded the small town. The rancher, a quiet man in his late 40s, had already saddled his old horse and was riding toward the town center. Life on his ranch had always been simple, almost lonely. He had inherited the land from his father, who had taught him the value of hard work and independence, but he had never learned much about companionship beyond his animals. Cows, horses, and a few chickens had been his family for years, and he often found comfort in the routine of feeding, milking, and tending the land. Still, there was a part of him that wondered what life could be like with someone to share it with, someone who could talk to him, someone who could care in return. The town that morning was buzzing with unusual activity. Word had spread that there would be an auction, something rare and exciting for the townspeople. Normally, the auctions were for cattle, horses, or farm tools, items that could help a rancher like him manage his property better. But today, the list of items included something he had never seen before, something that made his heart sink even before he understood it completely. Among the livestock and equipment, there were human lots, people who, because of debt or misfortune, were being sold. The rancher's horse slowed as he reached the outskirts of the town square, where wooden platforms had been set up for the auction. The air was filled with the smell of dust, hay, and anticipation. People milled around, speaking in low tones, some laughing, some whispering. The auctioneer's voice carried across the square, announcing the next lot. First came the cattle, then a few farm tools, and then the human lots. That's when he saw her, a young Chinese girl, no older than 13 or 14, standing timidly beside the platform. Her clothes were worn and tattered, her small hands clenched at her sides, and her eyes held a mixture of fear, confusion, and quiet sorrow. The rancher felt a sharp pang in his chest. He had never seen someone so fragile yet so full of life, someone who seemed completely lost in a world that had been unkind to her. As the bidding began, the price was shockingly low, just $3. The rancher couldn't believe it. He had seen animals sold for much more than that, yet here was a child, a human being treated as if she were no more than property. He could hear the murmurs from the crowd, some whispering about the girl's unfortunate circumstances, others laughing at the absurdity of the situation. He felt anger rise inside him, a protective, almost desperate feeling that he hadn't experienced in years. Without thinking too much about the cost or the consequences, he raised his hand and called out, "I'll take her." A hush fell over the crowd. The auctioneer blinked in surprise, then nodded and hammered the gavel, confirming the sale. The $3 transaction was complete, and the rancher took a deep breath, feeling both relief and apprehension. Relief that she would no longer be in that cruel situation, and apprehension because he knew that bringing her to his ranch would change his life in ways he could not yet imagine. The girl's eyes widened as she was led toward him. For the first time in what seemed like forever, she felt a sense of safety, though she did not yet understand it fully. She clung to the few belongings she had, her small bundle of worn clothes and a tattered blanket, and followed him quietly, not daring to speak. The rancher offered her a gentle smile, one that carried no judgment, no expectation, only the promise of care. The journey back to the ranch was quiet, the only sounds being the rhythmic clopping of the horse's hooves against the dirt road and the occasional distant crow of a bird. He spoke little, letting her adjust to the new reality without pressure. Occasionally, he would glance back and see her looking around, taking in the landscape, the fields, and the small houses in the distance. Her eyes, though wary, showed a flicker of curiosity. It was a slow, delicate beginning, the kind that required patience and understanding. When they arrived at the ranch, the girl's eyes widened even more. The land stretched far and wide, golden fields swaying in the breeze, sturdy barns standing against the sky, and a small farmhouse that looked humble yet welcoming. The rancher dismounted and led her toward the house, showing her the wooden floors, the simple furniture, and the warmth of a home that had never been shared before. She hesitated at first, unsure if she was allowed to enter, but he gently took her hand and guided her inside. For dinner that evening, he prepared a simple meal of rice, vegetables, and fresh eggs from the hens outside. She watched quietly, unsure of the customs, the smells, or even how to hold the utensils. But the rancher patiently guided her, showing her how to eat, how to serve herself, and how to feel comfortable in a space where she was no longer a stranger. He noticed her small smiles, tiny gestures of trust, and felt a deep sense of responsibility. This girl bought for $3 was now in his care, and he vowed silently to protect her, to teach her, and to give her the life she deserved. The first night was difficult. She could not sleep, her body stiff from years of discomfort and neglect. She huddled under the blanket, glancing around the room as though expecting someone to take her away. The rancher, noticing her unease, set up a small bed for himself nearby, not to intrude, but to let her know she was safe. He kept the lights dim, and the soft creaking of the wooden floors and the distant calls of the animals outside filled the room. Slowly, as the hours passed, her breathing steadied, and the tightness in her shoulders relaxed. In the days that followed, he helped her adjust to life on the ranch. He gave her clean clothes, combed her hair gently, and introduced her to the animals, explaining their habits and needs. She listened intently, her eyes wide with wonder, absorbing every word, every gesture, every demonstration of care. The rancher found himself talking more than he had in years, sharing stories of the land, the seasons, and the work it took to keep the ranch alive. Though she spoke little English, they found ways to communicate through gestures, drawings, and the simple language of kindness. The townspeople were curious and skeptical. Some whispered that he had gone mad, buying a child for so little and keeping her on his ranch. Others admired his courage, sensing the genuine care in his actions. Yet the rancher paid them little attention. He focused on the girl, on helping her find a sense of belonging, a feeling of home that she had never known before. He decided to give her a name, something simple, something she could claim as her own. After careful thought, he chose a name that felt strong and gentle at the same time, a name that would remind her she was no longer lost, no longer invisible. She listened to the name, repeating it slowly, her voice quiet but clear, a sound that brought a small smile to his face. As weeks turned into months, the ranch became their shared sanctuary. The girl learned the rhythms of farm life, tending the animals, helping with chores, and discovering the beauty of the land that stretched beyond the horizon. The rancher taught her not only skills but also values, honesty, patience, respect, and the importance of caring for others. In return, she offered him something he had long missed: companionship, laughter, and a quiet, steady presence that filled the emptiness of the ranch. Though the story of how they met was unusual and sometimes judged by others, it became a story of hope. A simple act of kindness, an impulse to help a frightened child, had transformed two lives. The rancher had found purpose beyond work, and the girl had found safety, love, and a home she could call her own. It was a beginning, a delicate but beautiful start to a journey that neither of them could have imagined, a journey that would teach them both about resilience, trust, and the power of compassion. Life on the ranch settled into a gentle rhythm, but it was far from ordinary. The young Chinese girl, now given a name by the rancher, slowly began to discover what it meant to live in a safe, caring place. Every morning she would wake to the soft light of the sun spilling over the hills, the sound of chickens clucking, and the low, steady breathing of the cows in the barn. At first, she was timid and unsure, still carrying shadows of fear from her past. But each day, as she learned the small routines of the ranch, those shadows began to fade just a little. The rancher was patient, never forcing her to do anything she was uncomfortable with. He understood that trust was not given, it was earned. He showed her how to feed the animals, how to clean the stables, and how to milk the cows. He taught her how to collect fresh eggs from the hens and how to carry water from the well. At first, her movements were awkward, her hands trembling as she tried to balance a bucket or lift a bale of hay. But he never scolded her. Instead, he offered encouragement, showing her that mistakes were part of learning and that no one would judge her for trying. The girl began to feel a sense of pride she had never known before. There was satisfaction in a job well done, in seeing a clean stable, or knowing that the cows had been fed and were happy. It was a quiet, steady joy, different from anything she had experienced in her previous life. Each chore completed gave her confidence, a small but important reminder that she could take care of herself, and that she could also be trusted to care for others. The rancher also took the time to teach her English. They would sit in the farmhouse in the evenings, the warm glow of a small oil lamp casting gentle shadows on the wooden walls. At first, she could only repeat single words, her pronunciation careful and slow. But the rancher was patient, correcting her gently, celebrating every small improvement. Slowly, she began forming sentences, telling him about her memories, her fears, and her hopes. Her voice, once quiet and hesitant, grew stronger, filled with curiosity and wonder. The rancher listened with respect, never interrupting, never dismissing her thoughts. Food became a symbol of care on the ranch. Every meal was prepared with attention, and the rancher made sure that the girl felt included. They cooked simple dishes, rice with vegetables, fresh eggs, and sometimes meat from the farm animals. But each meal was shared with care and conversation. She learned to help with the cooking, stirring the pots carefully, washing vegetables, and setting the table. These small moments, filled with warmth and routine, slowly helped her feel like part of a family, a feeling that had been missing for so long. Outside the chores and lessons, the rancher introduced her to the land itself. He would take her walking across the fields, showing her the way the wind moved through the grass, the patterns of the clouds, and the signs of animals that roamed the hills. He taught her to recognize bird calls, to notice tracks in the dirt, and to understand the rhythms of nature. The girl listened with wide eyes, fascinated by everything she had never seen before. Each day brought a new lesson, a new wonder, and a growing appreciation for the world around her. There were moments of silence between them too, moments where words were unnecessary. They would sit together on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun sink behind the hills, the sky turning shades of orange, pink, and purple. The girl would hold a small notebook and try to draw the scenes she saw, the cows grazing in the distance, the old barn silhouetted against the sky, the rolling fields stretching beyond the horizon. The rancher would sit beside her, offering gentle guidance, pointing out details she might have missed, praising her efforts. These quiet times became their own kind of learning, a way for them to connect without words, to understand each other through presence and care. Even as life on the ranch grew more predictable, there were challenges. The girl sometimes struggled with homesickness for a place she had barely known, or with fear from memories that would resurface unexpectedly. The rancher never dismissed these feelings. Instead, he offered comfort and reassurance, reminding her that she was safe, that she had a place here, and that her feelings were valid. Gradually, she learned to trust not only him, but also herself, to understand that she could navigate her emotions, and that the past did not have to define her future. The villagers in the nearby town began to notice the girl as well. Some were curious, watching from a distance as she worked alongside the rancher, learning quickly and showing signs of intelligence and resilience. Others were skeptical, unsure of the unusual arrangement. The rancher paid little attention to the gossip, focusing instead on the girl's well-being. But over time, even the most doubtful neighbors could see that she was thriving, that she had found a place where she belonged, and that the rancher's intentions were genuine. The girl also began to learn about responsibility. She learned that caring for the animals meant thinking ahead, being patient, and paying attention to details. If she forgot to feed the chickens or left the barn door open, it could cause trouble. But with guidance, she learned to anticipate needs, solve problems, and take initiative. The rancher encouraged her to think for herself, to make decisions, and to understand the consequences. These lessons were sometimes difficult, but they helped her grow into a thoughtful, capable young person. Over time, a bond grew between them that was stronger than words. It was built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. The girl had found someone who cared for her, someone who listened, taught, and guided her without judgment. The rancher had found someone who brought life, curiosity, and warmth into his quiet existence. Together, they discovered a rhythm that balanced work, learning, and care, creating a life that was small in scale but enormous in meaning. One afternoon, as they worked in the fields together, the girl paused and looked around at the vast land, the sunlight sparkling on the crops, and the animals moving in harmony. She felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before, a quiet happiness that was as simple as it was profound. She realized that she was no longer alone, that she had a home, and that she had someone who would protect her no matter what. The rancher noticed her expression and smiled, understanding without words that this moment was important. It was a milestone, a step in a journey that would continue to grow with each passing day. In the evenings, they would sometimes read together, or the rancher would tell stories about the history of the land, about his family, and about lessons he had learned over the years. The girl listened attentively, absorbing knowledge not only about language and work, but also about life, resilience, and kindness. She began to dream of the future, imagining a life where she could contribute, learn, and grow, no longer bound by fear or circumstance. The rancher often reflected on the day he had bought her for $3. It had seemed like a small, impulsive act at the time, a way to prevent further harm to a frightened child. Yet it had changed both of their lives forever. He had never imagined that such a simple choice could bring such meaning, warmth, and companionship into his life. The girl had found safety, trust, and hope. He had found connection, purpose, and joy in ways he had long forgotten. As the weeks turned into months, their life on the ranch became a quiet but profound testament to the power of care, patience, and kindness. Each day brought small victories, learning a new word, mastering a chore, understanding a new concept. But together, these victories built a life filled with confidence, trust, and belonging. They were no longer just a rancher and a frightened girl. They were companions, teachers, and life on the ranch continued to grow richer for both the girl and the rancher. By now, she had become familiar with the routines of the farm and the rhythm of the land. She woke each morning with the sun, helping the rancher feed the animals, water the crops, and tend to the fields. But more than just completing chores, she was learning about responsibility, care, and patience. Every task she performed, no matter how small, felt meaningful. She understood that the farm depended on her efforts, and this knowledge gave her a sense of pride that she had never experienced before. The rancher was impressed by her dedication. He watched quietly as she learned quickly, adapting to the demands of farm life with determination and care. When she made mistakes, he corrected her gently, offering guidance rather than criticism. Over time, she learned to anticipate what needed to be done, to notice small changes in the animal's behavior or the weather, and respond appropriately. She was no longer just learning, she was becoming capable, confident, and self-reliant. The rancher often smiled at her progress, realizing that the girl who had once been timid and fearful was slowly growing into someone strong, thoughtful, and independent. Language lessons continued every evening. The girl had made significant progress in English, and now she could express her thoughts in complete sentences. The rancher encouraged her to tell stories about her past, to describe what she remembered from her childhood, and to ask questions about the world around her. Her stories were sometimes fragmented, but they revealed glimpses of a life that had been difficult and lonely. Listening to her, the rancher felt both sorrow and admiration. Sorrow for the hardships she had endured, and admiration for the courage and resilience she showed despite them. With her growing language skills, she began to teach the rancher about her own culture. She spoke of festivals, traditions, and stories from her homeland, sharing fragments of her past that brought color and depth to their conversations. Though she had experienced hardship, she also carried memories of warmth and community that the rancher had never known. He listened with curiosity and respect, realizing that the bond they shared was not only about care, but also about understanding and mutual learning. As the girl grew more comfortable on the ranch, she began to explore her creativity. She loved to draw, capturing the beauty of the rolling fields, the animals, and the farmhouse. The rancher admired her talent and encouraged her to continue. He often joined her on walks through the fields, showing her different perspectives, pointing out the patterns of clouds in the sky, or the way sunlight fell on the grass. These moments became a part of their routine, a way for the girl to express herself, and for the rancher to connect with her through observation and conversation. Their bond was strengthened not only through work and learning, but also through shared experiences of discovery and wonder. One afternoon, they stumbled upon a small stream at the edge of the property, water clear and cool, flowing over smooth stones. The girl was fascinated, kneeling at the edge to watch the fish swim and to dip her hands into the water. The rancher joined her, showing her how to skip stones and watch the ripples spread. They laughed together, a sound that was new to the rancher, who had long lived in quiet solitude. These simple moments of joy became treasured memories, building trust and affection between them. The girl also began to understand the importance of caring for others. She watched how the rancher treated the animals with patience and respect, never harming them unnecessarily, and always ensuring they were fed and healthy. She began to emulate his behavior, speaking softly to the animals, tending to their needs, and noticing when something was wrong. The rancher praised her attentiveness, explaining that true care required observation, patience, and empathy. Slowly, she internalized these lessons, not just performing chores, but understanding the meaning behind them. The community outside the ranch continued to watch them with curiosity. Some villagers were still skeptical of the unusual arrangement, whispering about the girl's past or questioning the rancher's intentions. But as they observed the girl growing stronger, healthier, and more confident, many began to change their minds. They saw that she was safe, that she had found a home, and that the rancher's guidance was helping her thrive. In time, the skepticism faded, replaced by respect and admiration for the positive transformation taking place. Education became another important part of her life. The rancher, knowing the value of knowledge, taught her not only practical skills but also reading, writing, and simple arithmetic. He encouraged her to ask questions, to be curious about the world, and to pursue learning wherever she could. She eagerly absorbed the lessons, fascinated by ideas that had been beyond her reach in the past. Books became a source of adventure and inspiration, opening her mind to possibilities and dreams she had never imagined before. Trust, which had taken time to build, deepened further. She began to feel safe speaking openly, sharing her fears and hopes with the rancher. He listened without judgment, offering guidance and reassurance. Sometimes she would wake in the middle of the night, troubled by memories or uncertainty, and he would calmly sit with her until she felt secure again. These acts of care reinforced the sense of belonging she had begun to feel, solidifying the ranch as a true home, not just a place of shelter. The girl's confidence extended to her social skills as well. She began to interact more freely with the animals, learning to read their moods, understand their behavior, and respond appropriately. She even started exploring the outskirts of the ranch under the rancher's supervision, discovering new areas of the land, learning about plants, wildlife, and the seasons. Each discovery brought excitement and wonder, and she shared her observations with the rancher, who encouraged her curiosity and applauded her insights. The rancher, in turn, learned from her resilience and perspective. Her courage in facing challenges, her determination to learn, and her willingness to trust after trauma inspired him. He realized that their relationship was reciprocal, that he was growing alongside her. The ranch, once a solitary and quiet place, was now filled with learning, laughter, and discovery. It had become a dynamic home, shaped by care, respect, and mutual growth. One day, as they were tending the garden together, the girl stopped and looked at the rancher with a thoughtful expression. She spoke in English, still carefully, but with increasing confidence. "I never thought I could be happy," she said softly. "I thought life was only fear." The rancher smiled, understanding the weight of her words. "You deserve happiness," he replied. "You deserve a life where you are safe, where you can learn, grow, and dream." Her eyes filled with a quiet gratitude, and in that moment the bond between them felt stronger than ever. The rancher continued to encourage independence. He allowed her to make decisions, small at first, and then gradually larger. She learned to plan chores, manage the animal's needs, and even oversee aspects of the property when he was busy. These responsibilities gave her a sense of agency and ownership over her life, something she had never experienced before. The rancher watched proudly as she stepped into her growing role with maturity, thoughtfulness, and care. As the seasons changed, the girl's skills and confidence continued to expand. She learned to adapt to the demands of winter, preparing the animals and the property for cold nights and snow. She learned to enjoy spring, planting seeds, tending flowers, and observing new life emerge in the fields. Summer brought long days of work and adventure, exploring the hills and streams, learning about nature, and discovering joy in the simplest things. Fall brought harvest and preparation, a time to reflect on growth and progress. Through all these changes, the rancher guided her with wisdom, patience, and unwavering care. Their life together became a story of hope, resilience, and the power of kindness. The girl, once fragile and fearful, had transformed into a capable, confident, and joyful young person. The rancher, once solitary and quiet, had rediscovered purpose, companionship, and the satisfaction of nurturing a life. Together, they navigated the challenges of farm life, the lessons of responsibility, and the beauty of discovery. Their bond was a testament to the difference that care, patience, and trust could make, shaping a future filled with possibility and promise. As the girl grew stronger and more confident on the ranch, life seemed to settle into a steady rhythm. Yet with growth came new challenges, and both she and the rancher would soon face situations that tested their trust, patience, and courage. The first signs of change came from outside the ranch, as curious neighbors and officials began to notice the unusual arrangement. They had heard whispers about the girl's past, her origins, and how she had come to live on the ranch. Some were skeptical, some suspicious, and a few were openly judgmental. One morning, as the rancher and the girl were tending the fields, a car slowly approached the driveway. Two local officials stepped out, polite but serious in demeanor. The girl felt a sudden flutter of anxiety in her chest. She had not yet experienced encounters with adults outside the ranch who were concerned about her presence. The rancher, sensing her unease, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay calm," he said softly. "Everything is all right. They just want to ask questions." The officials walked up to them and introduced themselves. They explained that some townspeople had raised concerns about the girl living on the ranch and that it was their duty to ensure her safety. The rancher nodded respectfully, understanding their role, and invited them to the farmhouse. He explained how he had come to the girl's aid, how she had been living in unsafe conditions before, and how he had worked to create a safe, nurturing environment for her. He described her daily routine, her education, and the progress she had made. The girl watched carefully as the officials listened. She noticed the seriousness in their expressions, but also saw that they were trying to understand rather than accuse. When asked about her well-being, she spoke cautiously, her voice steady but quiet. "I am safe here," she said. "I am learning, I am happy." Her words were simple, but they carried truth and honesty. The rancher nodded in encouragement, proud that she could express herself clearly and confidently. The officials spent the afternoon observing the ranch, watching the girl interact with the animals, complete her chores, and engage in learning activities. They noted the careful attention she received, the structure of her education, and the safe environment of the home. By the end of their visit, their skepticism had lessened. They offered guidance and resources, suggesting ways the rancher could continue to support her development and ensure that her rights were protected. Though the visit had caused some nervousness, it ultimately strengthened the sense of security and legitimacy for both the rancher and the girl. Despite the initial tension, life on the ranch continued with renewed focus. The girl's confidence continued to grow, and she began to take more initiative in her daily activities. She started to plan the day's work herself, organize chores, and even make small decisions about the care of the animals. The rancher encouraged her independence, understanding that her ability to make choices and take responsibility was essential for her growth. Each success, no matter how small, became a stepping stone toward her self-reliance. Occasionally, news of the girl's progress reached the town. Some neighbors who had once doubted the arrangement were now curious and even admiring. They would visit the outskirts of the ranch, observing from a distance as she worked confidently and interacted with the animals. Some brought small gifts, seeds for the garden, books for learning, or tools to help with chores. The girl received these gestures with gratitude, learning not only to accept kindness, but also to understand the importance of community and connection. One significant change came when the rancher introduced more structured lessons. He wanted the girl to have knowledge beyond the ranch, to understand the world and prepare for a future she could shape herself. They studied reading, writing, arithmetic, and basic science, often incorporating lessons into farm work. For example, counting eggs became an exercise in numbers, while measuring soil for planting vegetables involved practical mathematics. Nature itself became a classroom, teaching lessons in observation, patience, and problem-solving. The girl thrived in this learning environment. She asked questions, made observations, and eagerly absorbed new information. Her curiosity was insatiable, and the rancher encouraged it, sometimes spending hours explaining concepts or exploring ideas together. They would discuss how plants grew, why animals behaved in certain ways, or how the changing seasons affected life on the ranch. The girl began to think critically, not just follow instructions, and the rancher admired the sharpness and insight she demonstrated. While the outside world continued to watch, the rancher and the girl also faced natural challenges. One spring, heavy rains caused the small stream at the edge of the property to swell, threatening the lower fields. The girl immediately understood the potential danger and helped the rancher reinforce barriers, move animals to higher ground, and protect the crops as best they could. Her actions reflected both her growing confidence and her sense of responsibility. Together, they managed the situation without loss, turning a potentially frightening experience into a lesson in preparedness and teamwork. The girl also began to explore her creativity more deeply. She wrote short stories, drew detailed sketches of the ranch, and even created small projects using materials around the farm. The rancher encouraged her efforts, helping her see the value in creativity and self-expression. These activities became a source of joy and relaxation, a way for her to reflect on her experiences and develop her imagination. The rancher, too, found delight in her creativity, appreciating how it added richness and color to the quiet life of the ranch. Over time, they began to engage more with the community. The girl learned to speak confidently with neighbors, share her knowledge about animals and farming, and participate in local events. Though initially shy and hesitant, she gradually gained the respect of those around her. People began to recognize her not as a girl who had been rescued, but as a capable, intelligent, and responsible young person contributing positively to the community. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the girl and the rancher sat on the porch together, reflecting on the changes in their lives. "I never knew life could be like this," she said quietly, gazing at the horizon. "I thought the world was only danger and fear. Now I feel hope." The rancher placed a hand on her shoulder. "You earned it," he said. "You worked hard, learned, and trusted. Hope is something you carry inside, not something given. And you've carried it well." She smiled, feeling a deep sense of belonging and pride, knowing that her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined before. As seasons passed, the girl continued to grow in skill, wisdom, and confidence. She began to take responsibility for teaching new routines, helping younger animals adjust, and even guiding tasks on the farm when the rancher was busy with other projects. Their teamwork became seamless, a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. The rancher realized that she was no longer just a student or someone he was protecting. She had become a true companion, a partner in building a life filled with meaning, care, and mutual support. The challenges they faced together, both from the outside world and within the natural rhythms of the farm, strengthened their bond. They learned to anticipate difficulties, solve problems creatively, and adapt to changes with resilience and patience. These experiences taught the girl that life was not just about survival. It was about growth, learning, and contributing to something larger than oneself. For the rancher, it was a lesson in the power of compassion, trust, and the impact of a single act of kindness that could shape an entire life. By now, the girl had become confident in her ability to navigate both the ranch and the broader world. She no longer feared the opinions of others, the uncertainties of life, or the unknown. She had learned that challenges could be met with preparation, patience, and courage, and that kindness and care could create a safe and nurturing environment even in the most difficult circumstances. The rancher watched her with pride, knowing that their journey together had transformed not only her life but his as well. Life on the ranch, while still simple, had grown rich with meaning. The girl's presence brought laughter, curiosity, and energy into the quiet fields. The rancher's guidance provided stability, safety, and wisdom. Together, they navigated each day, learning from each other, growing together, and creating a life that was peaceful, productive, and full of hope. Their story, once shadowed by uncertainty and fear, had blossomed into one of trust, resilience, and the quiet beauty of shared life. Years had passed since the rancher had first bought the girl for $3. The small child who had arrived timid and fearful was now a confident, capable young woman, full of life, curiosity, and purpose. She had grown not only in age but in strength, intelligence, and independence. The ranch, once quiet and solitary, had become a place of warmth, laughter, and growth, a home that reflected their shared journey of patience, trust, and care. The young woman had mastered almost every aspect of life on the ranch. She could tend the animals with ease, manage the gardens, and handle chores that even the rancher found challenging. But her skills went beyond the practical. She had developed a deep understanding of the land, the animals, and the subtle rhythms of nature. She could anticipate when a cow needed care, recognize the first signs of illness in the animals, and even predict the weather based on subtle changes in the air and sky. Her education extended beyond farming. She was curious about the world, eager to learn new skills and always asking questions that reflected her growing wisdom. The rancher often watched her with a mixture of pride and quiet amazement. He remembered the day he had first brought her to the ranch, how fragile and scared she had been, and now he saw the incredible transformation. It was not just her skill or confidence that impressed him, but her heart. She had retained kindness, patience, and thoughtfulness despite all she had experienced. She treated the animals with respect, the land with care, and people with empathy. Her growth was a testament to resilience, the power of trust, and the life-changing impact of compassion. The girl, now a young woman, had also become a bridge between the rancher and the community. People who had once doubted or whispered about their unusual arrangement now came to seek advice, guidance, and learning from her. She taught neighbors how to care for animals, shared tips for planting and harvesting crops, and even helped children in the town learn basic reading and arithmetic. Her presence had become a source of inspiration and positivity for everyone who visited or observed the ranch. One morning, as they walked through the fields together, the young woman paused to examine a patch of soil that had been damaged by a storm the night before. She knelt down, feeling the earth in her hands, and spoke thoughtfully. "We can fix this," she said, her voice steady and confident. "It will take work, but we can make it better than before." The rancher smiled, recognizing the determination in her words. "That's the way," he said. "The land, like life, needs care, patience, and persistence. And you've learned that well." Their life together was not without challenges, but each obstacle was met with teamwork, resilience, and creativity. When storms threatened the crops, they found ways to protect them. When animals fell ill, they treated them with patience and knowledge. When supplies ran low, they planned carefully to manage resources. These shared experiences strengthened their bond, building a foundation of mutual trust and respect that could withstand any difficulty. Education had become a lifelong pursuit for the young woman. She read books about farming techniques, animal care, science, and even stories from other cultures. She asked questions, sought guidance, and applied her learning to the practical life of the ranch. The rancher encouraged her curiosity, often exploring new ideas with her or helping her understand complex concepts. Their evenings were filled with shared knowledge, discussions about the world, and reflections on the lessons they had learned together. The community, once skeptical, had come to admire the young woman's skill, intelligence, and character. She became a respected figure in the town, known not only for her abilities but for her generosity, kindness, and willingness to help others. People sought her advice, invited her to community events, and recognized her as someone who had overcome great challenges to become strong, capable, and inspiring. She had earned their respect not through words alone, but through her actions, her integrity, and the life she had built alongside the rancher. The rancher himself had changed over the years. He had found companionship, purpose, and fulfillment in ways he had never imagined. Life on the ranch was no longer just about work and solitude. It was about sharing, teaching, guiding, and learning. He had discovered the joy of seeing someone grow, thrive, and embrace life fully. The girl, now a young woman, had become a source of inspiration, reminding him daily of the impact of kindness, patience, and care. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink across the horizon, they sat together on the porch, watching the fields sway gently in the breeze. The young woman spoke quietly, reflecting on their journey. "I cannot believe how far we have come," she said. "I never imagined life could be like this, safe, full of learning, and filled with people who care." The rancher nodded, feeling the weight of her words and the truth behind them. "You have come far," he said, "and yet this is only the beginning. Life has so much more to offer, and you are ready for it." Her confidence had grown to the point where she could take on leadership roles in the farm, guiding others, managing resources, and planning for the future. She had learned that life required responsibility, foresight, and care, not just for oneself, but for the community, the land, and all living creatures. The rancher encouraged her independence, knowing that she would continue to grow and make a difference wherever she went. Despite their successes, the young woman never forgot the hardships she had endured before arriving at the ranch. She carried the memories of fear, uncertainty, and isolation as a reminder of how far she had come. These experiences fueled her determination to help others in need, to offer guidance, and to ensure that no one else would experience the fear she had once known. Her empathy became one of her greatest strengths, shaping her interactions and inspiring others around her. The rancher often reflected on the simplicity and power of his first act, buying her for $3. It had seemed like a small, impulsive decision, yet it had transformed both of their lives in profound ways. He had given her a chance, a home, and guidance, but in return she had brought life, warmth, and meaning into his existence. Their story was one of mutual growth, compassion, and the transformative power of kindness. The young woman also began teaching the next generation. Children from the town would visit the ranch, eager to learn about animals, plants, and the land. She guided them with patience and care, sharing lessons she had learned firsthand. She taught them to be observant, responsible, and kind, instilling values that would shape their lives as she had been shaped. The rancher watched these lessons unfold with quiet pride, seeing the impact of their shared journey extend beyond the boundaries of their own home. Life on the ranch had become a balance of work, learning, and reflection. The seasons continued to bring challenges and opportunities. Winters tested their resilience, springs brought growth and renewal, summers offered abundance and exploration, and autumns provided moments of reflection and preparation. Through every season, the young woman and the rancher faced life together, learning from the land, from each other, and from every experience. By now, the ranch was more than a home. It was a symbol of safety, hope, and transformation. It stood as a testament to what could happen when kindness, patience, and trust were combined with determination and care. The girl, who had arrived frightened and unsure, had grown into a strong, independent, and inspiring young woman. The rancher, who had lived in quiet solitude for years, had discovered the joy of companionship, mentorship, and shared purpose. Together, they had created a life filled with meaning, love, and possibility. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the young woman looked out over the fields, the animals moving quietly in the fading light. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had overcome her past, embraced her present, and prepared for her future. She turned to the rancher, her eyes bright with gratitude and understanding. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." The rancher smiled, feeling the depth of her words and the journey they had shared. "You have done all the work yourself," he replied. "I only guided you. You are strong, capable, and ready for anything." The years had taught them both many lessons about patience, responsibility, resilience, and the power of kindness. They had faced challenges, overcome fears, and built a life that was richer than either could have imagined alone. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It was a home, a school, a sanctuary, and a place of growth. Together, they had turned a moment of impulse into a lifetime of purpose and joy. As night fell over the ranch, the stars began to sparkle across the sky. The young woman and the rancher sat quietly, listening to the sounds of the land, reflecting on their journey and dreaming of what the future might bring. They had come far, yet their story was still unfolding. They had discovered that compassion could change lives, that trust could build strength, and that a single act of care could create ripples that would last a lifetime. And in that quiet, peaceful moment, they both understood the truth they had lived for so many years. Life, when shared with care, patience, and love, could become something extraordinary.